Am I recording? Yep, I think I am now. Okay, I'm back. And this video, talking once again about Kundalini and a little bit about a type of Kundalini rising. There are at least 6 or 7 types of Kundalini risings. Who knew? And this one, we're going to talk about one in particular, a deflected rising. And this video is in response to a question I received from someone. And I think it was a brilliant, first of all, brave question to ask. So thank you very much. And it's an important question because I know, like I've said in the other videos, so many people are waking up and the energies that are coming in are stimulating and awakening or rousing Kundalini in so many people. So I'm pretty darn sure this question is relevant to many people out there. So it's a great question. And the question is, after what appears to be a Kundalini awakening, are sexual encounters with what appears to be non-physical beings, is this really what is happening with actual tactile sensations? So is this possible? Is this part of a Kundalini rising or Kundalini awakening? And the answer is yes. And these encounters, sexual encounters with non-physical beings, are absolutely possible and common even without Kundalini rising. So you're not going crazy. That's what I want to say. I've experienced such encounters, and while they are not common, it is not rare. Okay, so I have to make a disclaimer. What I know about Kundalini is about this much. And what there is to know about Kundalini is so much that I can't even spread my arms out far enough to show you. So here's my disclaimer. I know just enough to be dangerous. So I say all of this as entertainment purposes only. But I want to share what I know, which is very basic and may have some minute flaws here and there, but it will be enough to point someone in a direction. Okay, if you stumbled on this video or you've asked the question of me, then I was the right person to point you in another direction. So it'll all work out. Okay, so, and why do I want to share this information? Because the vast knowledge of Kundalini, the depth that we really need to understand Kundalini in all of its different forms and all of its different risings and flavors and experiences and trouble that it can cause, seems to only be available in very deeply hidden, I want to say, Indian traditions. Although there is a book out there called Kundalini Vidya by Joan Harrigan. And she has another book that's like massive and it's steeped with everything you wanted to know and everything you didn't want to know about Kundalini in here. This is the go-to book. But it is so full of Indian terminology that it's very difficult to get through. I have a difficult time because I don't understand all the terms and my brain just can't assimilate the information. So I think this is really unfortunate. I mean, you can Google Kundalini Rising, Kundalini Awakening, and you're going to get very basic, just basic stuff. And it's not enough nowadays. Nowadays, we need to have this information available in practical, easy, layman terms for everybody to understand because of what's happening on the planet. So many people are waking up. We need this information available. So that's my little soapbox. Let me point you to some other directions also. Bonnie GreenWALL has some wonderful YouTube videos out there talking about Kundalini. I'm not sure she goes into the different types of risings, but she's a good resource. She has a couple of books. Lawrence Edwards has a book out there. I'm not sure how much he goes into it, but he's a respected Kundalini person. And Joan Harrigan, Kundalini Vidya, also has, something just popped up on my computer, an interview on Bat Gap, Buddha at the Gas Pump YouTube channel. So I would definitely watch that interview. She speaks a little bit about the deflected risings. Okay, so enough of that disclaimer. So Kundalini can rise in many different ways. The way we want it to rise is through the central channel, the Sushumna. Even these words are hard for me to say. Central channel, that is the goal. But in a person, and so this questioner who is having this experience, if this is indeed related to Kundalini, I suspect, I can only speculate, that this is a deflected rising. And why does someone have a deflected rising? In many cases, it's these initial risings of energy are brought on, according to this book and what I've heard, brought on by shock, trauma, and or psychedelic experiences. Something that shocks Kundalini into rising, an initial rising, before the aspirant, the person, is spiritually prepared and or the subtle, which same thing, the subtle bodies are not prepared to have the central channel rising. So shock and trauma, it doesn't have to be, you know, a near-death experience. It could be, shock and trauma is relative. You know, it could be a bad breakup. It could be, it doesn't matter, something that shocked the system into having Kundalini rise before the person was spiritually ready. Spiritually and energetically ready. And so what happens is, initially, this can cause the Kundalini to rise, I believe, through the central channel, passing through all of the chakras, but not opening them, and going directly to the brain center, the 1,000-petal lotus, where it goes and it stimulates some of those petals in the brain center, which then activates phenomenal talents or psychic abilities or healing abilities or anything that you can imagine, okay? But then Kundalini goes right back down and rests in the root chakra. And why? So it goes back down, and then because she's been stimulated and all of these other, all the chakras are still blocked and closed, because remember, maybe the person hasn't really dedicated themselves to a spiritual practice. They haven't cleaned up their physical body. Their heart really isn't into spiritual awakening or spiritual practice yet. Who knows? But these chakras are not ready. They haven't been cleaned out. So she's stuck at the root chakra. She can't rise, but she's agitated. She's been agitated and she's jumping around, and she's stuck here in the stimulating the genitals and the brain center at the same time, but none of the other chakras are cleared out. But she's taken a deflective route. And there are two deflected risings. there's a left and a right, and the left one is called the sex rising. It's the Vajra Nadi, and it's really naughty. So Kundalini can't reach the central channel because the chakras are still blocked due to not working on dissolving ego, fears, all that sort of stuff. And it's taking the route through another route through the left nadi known as the Vajra Nadi. And this stimulates genitals and brain center, genitals. And she's very aggravated and agitated. Okay, so that's what I suspect is going on. Now, I've lost my place, so I'm going to have to put this on pause because I'm going to read a little bit from the book. So let me pause here. Okay, now I know reading is terrible online in videos, but I do it quite often, so get used to it. Okay, here's what this book, Kundalini Vidya, has to say about this type of rising. So it passes through all the chakras, not opening them, but does not go through the makara or bindu point. Those are the spiritual awakening points. In a rising such as this, many brain centers are opened, especially in men. And think about all these very charismatic gurus who have all this, energy, and they draw people to them, and then you find out they're having sex with their students or young girls or young boys. And it's been talked about that they most likely had these deflected type risings because they come with so much power and charisma, but the sexual energy that exudes from these people. And it's usually, I would say usually men, but because we haven't had as many female gurus as men gurus, so it does seem like it's more men, but I think in men it's stronger, that sexual energy and they will use it, right? Anyway, okay. Especially in men whose brains and hormonal function differ from those of women. This yields special talents and possible charisma and paranormal abilities, usually making the person remarkable in some way, perhaps as an eccentric genius or a brilliant though troubled talent. The skills may be useful, but the rising is not comfortable because it stimulates both ends of this particular nadi, the brain and the genital. Intelligence and talent with a strong sex drive are the result. Thus, the person is often gifted, troubled, restless, and inconsistent. Okay? And if this person, when this type of rising, because it's so agitated, and if this person doesn't recognize it and take responsibility and start doing spiritual practice and clearing out ego stuff, fears and all that, and start unblocking those chakras, then it will continue to deplete the subtle bodies, the etheric, I don't know if etheric, but mental, emotional, the astral, all of our energy bodies. It will just keep depleting that. And then it even makes it more difficult for Kundalini to rise through the central channel, because as we clear away our stuff, it builds and strengthens, clears out our subtle bodies, but strengthens it, which then allows Kundalini to rise through the central channel. So if not taken care of, detoxing the body, eating right, spiritual practice, and most importantly, practices to still the mind, then this is just going to get worse for perhaps this person, because it depletes your subtle bodies, which means depletion of your vitality, your vital force, your prana, which then probably leads to, who cares about spiritual? I'm just going to, who knows what it can lead to? Illness. And you know, here's the thing. If you do nothing, Kundalini will find a way of getting you back on track. And if that happens to be an illness, because now your subtle body's so depleted that it's got to resort to an illness, then she will. But, you know, you don't need to wait for an illness to get you on track. Okay, let's see. Kundalini goes up and down, stimulating the genital chakra. And this can, sexual addiction ensues with possible sexual dysfunction. And here's what happens. Because this energy, you know, she's had two opening points. She has the genital point and the brain point. And so she's agitated and she's, you know, deflected and she's rising brain, genitals. But in between those times when she's rising, she can get stuck at any one of the chakras and cause you to have periods of great suffering in any one of those chakras. So can be a very difficult rising. Here's another little thing here. When a person with this type of rising is attracted to and excited by something, Kundalini rises and activates the brain centers once again, which improves brain function temporarily, but is followed by neurotransmitter deficits. Due to the instability of this rising, there are fluctuations in experiences. At times, the person may be brilliant and at others despondent. Some men, in particular, with risings through this Vajra Nadi, feel they do not function well without sex or substances due to the neurotransmitter deficiency. So when the brain gets stimulated, the neurotransmitters are stimulated just like they are in sexual orgasm. And so just like after sex, after that release, you kind of get that down depletion. Well, then this keeps happening in the person as if, you know, it's after the sexual release. They feel despondent, perhaps depressed. So they feel that they can't function well without sexual stimulation. It's like, it's a catch-22. Okay? It can become a very addictive cycle. Some men in particular, let's see, grandiosity and ego inflation contrast the inevitable crash. So let's see, because what happens, you get great, fantastic talents with this rising. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Did I tell you about, I cannot remember if I told you about I work with an energy healer, and she's also a spiritual teacher, Dani Antman. She also had a deflected rising, the sex rising, and she talks about in her book how she had experiences with gargoyle-type beings who wanted to have sex with her, or she woke up with these beings having sex with her due to this type of rising. And she was kind of a sex addicted person, can become obsessed with men. So yeah, by the way, this is a great book, Wired for God, but she talks about this type of rising. And I think I will link to parts of her book that talk about this. If I said this earlier, I'm sorry. I'm going on and I can't remember what I said. Anyway, so these are common experiences with this type of rising. Okay, what else do I want to say? Yes, also, this type of rising will cause a person, cause is probably the wrong word, but this person will have a definite leaning towards occult practices. Let's see what this is. In addition, the person may have a fascination for the occult, as occult methods or being in the occult would utilize these special talents, you know, because this type of rising, you've got this great talent, you're a healer, you think you're awake, you're charismatic, you have lots of power, and it can be very ego inflating. And so you get drawn to occult methods where you can utilize your powers, but this has nothing to do with the spiritual awakening. Yes, they may also become greatly attached to their talent and fall into despair when the muse mysteriously leaves. Vajra rising people can be marvelously creative and insightful, and tragically afflicted with egoism and insatiable drives that undermine their success. So there you have it. So, wrap up. Yes, sexual encounters with non-physical beings can absolutely be the result of Kundalini rising or an initial awakening arising that now has become a deflected rising. And this all can be alleviated by picking up a more intense or sincere spiritual practice, creating stillness of mind, cleaning up your diet to strengthen the subtle body, and then taking responsibility for all the egoic impressions in each one of the chakras, starting at the base chakra, so that we can create an opening for the deflected rising to come back down and find its way up the central channel. And the biggest, most important advice I can give is, if there is some sincerity for spiritual awakening, then the biggest gift you can give to yourself is to ask Kundalini Shakti, the Divine Mother, in for help. Call your helpers in for help, and she will help you. But you've got to create a space, stillness in your body, where you just, I wouldn't even say meditation, just get into a meditation and ask Kundalini to help you, and then let go of everything in your body and just create an open space for Kundalini to start bringing up those fears, desires, attachments that you need to look at in order for her to start rising through the central channel. Okay? Fascinating stuff. Anyway, I hope this has helped, and thank you so much for the question. I learned a lot, and I hope you learned something too. Okay. Happy Kundalini rising.